Hi, I'm your host Vasco Duarte. Welcome to the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast, where we share tips and tricks from Scrum Masters around the world. Every day, we bring you inspiring answers to important questions that all Scrum Masters face day after day. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our Wednesday, the Leading Change episode this week with Drew Craig. Hey, Drew, welcome back.
Oh, thank you very much. We made it to Hump Day.
Absolutely. And it's Change Day also here, which actually goes with that in the sense that there's a lot of humps to go over before change can happen.
Absolutely. That's right.
So let's look at this from the perspective of us, Scrum Masters, Agile Coaches, change agents in general. Mm-hmm. We work with change all the time, and therefore we need to have our toolbox of tools ready for when the situation arises. And it will arise once a change starts. So let's dive into that. Tell us the story of a change that you were involved with and walk us through the steps, like how it went from the beginning until later on in the process. And as you go through those steps, highlight for us the tools, the tips, the tricks, and the techniques you learned back then that you still apply today.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mentioned working with the pharmaceutical organization in one of the past episodes. And this, again, I'll remind the audience, was a digital marketing transformation. And it's quite different than what we're typically used to. And you're not used to working with non-technical folks as much. And on their side as well, they're not used to these types of conversations. And what I learned was that all references of material for trainings were very technically oriented. And this was a challenge in introducing this new change.
Can you give an example of that technical orientation in the training material?
Absolutely. So when we do Agile trainings or Scrum trainings, we always talk about developers from the context of programmers. We talk about breaking down our work into slices, but we talk about and reference things like having vertical slices between our front-end UI, our database layer, our architecture. And these are terminologies that this audience didn't understand. And they were already a little bit taken back by the unrelatableness of the information. So one of the things that we did as a group was we shifted up our training materials to be a little bit more human oriented around the change itself. Hey, as we start to move into this new way of working, this will also introduce new ways of thinking, new ways of operating, new ways of interacting with each other. And this included shifting the way we did our training. So our training reduced from 3 weeks to a week, and it was less technical. And it was recognizing that the audience can only capture and digest so much information at a time. And this afforded them the opportunity to start doing and working within the new system, right? We changed the way their team structure was. We changed the way they sat, right? They sat now in smaller agile team rooms. Their roles shifted from maybe their marketing manager role to product owner. These are large changes in this type of organization. It's also a very highly regulated organization in which they have to have medical and legal and regulatory reviews and approvals. So we worked with that team as well to be a little bit more agile in their process and to introduce and coordinate them with these agile teams to change the structure and adherence, and I guess I'll use the word stiffness of their roles and responsibilities. And all of this helped the teams to deliver faster. Right? This was the change in how they can rethink their value and rethink the way they're structured in order to deliver that value to their customers.
How did you actually go through the process of finding out what's the best seating arrangement, what's the best set of roles? How did you have that? Did you have that discussion with the people in that organization? Like, how did it go?
In that particular instance, we were a group of consultants to help. The leadership in that organization had orchestrated kind of the organization of how these teams would be structured. It was our responsibility to launch these teams, to train these teams, but to then also provide feedback to leadership as we start to scale the system, what is working, what's not. So, for example, the training was not working. The way the interaction with these legal and regulatory folks was not working, because no matter how nimble we could make the teams, we were always running into the same roadblock. And so the recognition was, hey, what can we do with this medical and legal and regulatory process that can help these teams to be as nimble as we're creating them?
Yeah, absolutely. And that collaboration is really critical because the leadership may want the organization to shift towards more agile ways of working. But when you start training and when you start working with the teams, then you are faced with realities that even leadership could not have predicted because they are not the teams, right?
Exactly. And you start to find that you have ingrained processes that you had not really thought about as being a part of your transformation. This is when we start to think about it's not just the teams that we're transforming, it is the entire system. And if you start to think about from a value stream perspective, you start to recognize the different facets of the organization that these teams touch. And it's interesting you use the word collaboration, because the term that they used for the medical and legal and regulatory group was, they termed it content collaboration. And that actually was, I think, a larger change transformation than the actual Agile teams were. This is a group of lawyers, past doctors that are not used to working like this at all. And the whole that section of the organization did have to be restructured in order to meet with these teams once, sometimes twice a week on a regular basis. It was quite a change. And you know what I can tell the audience is, it was very impactful, and they reduced their time of delivery from months to weeks, because they negated the handoff and they negated the disparate approvals, and they introduced context to this group, right? Everything's out of context when you hand things over the fence. And when they brought them into the teams and they could hear the collaboration and they could understand the intentionality of the work that they were doing and the rationale, then they were able to provide real-time feedback on this work. So when they did submit it for approval, it would get approved because they already got the feedback in real time.
And another aspect of the change was this ability that you guys built of listening to what is working and then going back and thinking about what was not working, and then even finding out, of course, new stuff like what you just said about restructuring how this team was in the organization, was part of the work in the organization, because it really is in the doing of the work that we find the work that needs to be done, as Woody Will often says.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. Another thing that it really helped was the trust amongst different areas of the organization. It really brought folks together. These organizations are built in such a way that you just have these silos, these embedded silos across the organization. And it really was a boundary spanning exercise to bring these groups together who would never work together like this. And it really changed the way folks interacted in this organization, and it brought about a lot of inherent psychological safety where they felt comfortable in talking about their work and talking about why they think this is the right thing and showing their research, and in some instances, fighting for what they believed in and changing the minds of these approvers. So it was really a lot of great lessons in that whole process.
Absolutely. And a great story. Thank you for sharing that, Drew.
Oh, yes, that was I've learned a lot from that. It's always good to reflect back.
Leading change is one of the core skills we must acquire, but it is only one of the steps towards our success as Scrum Masters. Tomorrow, on Success Thursday, we will talk about how to define success for the Scrum Master role. We'll cover tips on how to measure your way to that position, and most importantly, how to develop that focus on continuous improvement that is as important for Scrum Masters as it is for teams. See you tomorrow. We really hope you liked our show. And if you did, why not rate this podcast on Stitcher or iTunes? Share this podcast and let other Scrum Masters know about this valuable resource for their work. Remember that sharing is caring.